One could look at the challenge of the politics of the moment in New York or around the country, and one could see challenges. But I take a different view. I think this is a moment to be optimistic and to be thankful because of the people in this room. Now, I admit, yesterday I had the pleasure of seeing the great classic movie Freebirds with my 7-year-old and 10-year-old. If you're not familiar with Freebirds, it's a compelling cartoon cinema focused on the Thanksgiving holiday, which is a favorite holiday of mine. So I may be particularly in the Thanksgiving spirit. But one of the themes of this movie, which is largely about turkeys escaping the tradition of turkey execution on Thanksgiving, one of the themes of the movie is about the spirit of Thanksgiving, the idea that Thanksgiving is about thankfulness. Although you only come to that after the successful turkey revolution. But I'll leave that to you to enjoy. Thanksgiving is about being thankful for things. We are thankful at the department for the folks in this room because you are out leading. And one of the challenges in a moment of change is that it is hard to lead that change. You are the holders of the anxieties of your school communities. I suspect that someone emailed you over the weekend and said, make sure you bring back that ELA module number 2. I imagine that somebody said to you, make sure you ask this particular question about math module 3. I am sure that people asked you to come back and tell them that it is going to be okay. People are looking to you as their colleagues to help support them through a moment of challenge and change. And any moment of challenge and change comes with anxiety, comes with moments of frustration, and we are experiencing that. But I'm optimistic because I spend a lot of time in schools around the state, and I am constantly impressed by what I see happening in classrooms because of the work that people around this room are doing. I visited nearly 40 schools since the start of the school year. And in classroom after classroom, in communities that are affluent, communities that are struggling economically, I see the Common Core in action. 2 weeks ago, I was in a classroom in central Harlem, sitting with 2 students discussing evidence from text in To Kill a Mockingbird and Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and how the evidence that they had drawn from those texts pointed to similar themes from those texts. I was in a classroom last week in Rochester at School 3, a priority school, a school that has struggled with poor performance, and was in a classroom where students were learning why it is that when you are multiplying decimals, you put the decimal point in a specific place. And they weren't learning it as some rule or gimmick to be memorized. They were learning it because they understood how decimals work. They understood what it was that they were doing. They understood how to estimate in order to think about their answer and check their answer. Students were excited about math. They were excited about math problem solving in a school where historically, again, performance has not been where they wanted it to be, but they are transforming the academic experience of students through the work on the Common Core. I've been in classrooms from Amherst to Fayetteville, Manlius, up to Copenhagen, down to William Floyd, seeing the Common Core in action. In William Floyd, I was in 2 math classrooms that were both doing the same math module, but with teachers with different personalities and personas and classroom approaches. The rooms felt different, but students were learning the same skills and were excited about their math problem-solving work. I was at Portchester, visiting classrooms where English language learners are being supported through the challenge of the text complexity of the Common Core. And teachers express how hard they are working, how hard it is to figure out how to build the bridge between where their students are and where they need them to be, and their belief that they can do it. And students' excitement about the text and about the learning that they're doing in the classroom. I was in Newburgh talking with a teacher who had a classroom that was an inclusion classroom, many struggling readers, who was trying to figure out how could she help bridge between where her students are as readers and where they need to be to tackle a challenging text about Antarctica. And she had, much as we've talked about here many times, she'd picked out a text that was at a lower level of text complexity as a bridge to the more challenging text. And it had taken her some time to find the text, and it had taken her longer to get through the module because she'd done that, but it gave her students access to challenging grade level text, students who wouldn't ordinarily have had that access. And you could see how students' vocabulary and their language and their ability to grapple with challenging text was enhanced because of the scaffolding she had provided and the opportunity she was giving them to do the right work in an English language arts classroom. At school 3, speaking of English language arts, school 3, I was in the classroom, in an ELA classroom, and they were about to get Esperanza Rising. And I was sitting next to a 5th grader who turned to me and said, "I am so excited." And I mean, he could not contain himself. And he's looking, as the teacher is walking around the room with the books, and he's looking with such anticipation about the book. And I said, "That's great. Why are you so excited?" He said, "Well, last year we did this module about the Iroquois, and it was great, and I just can't wait to read this book." And I thought, this is priceless. I mean, the kid was perfect. He's so excited about reading. That's why we do what we do. That's what we should be thankful for. I'm thankful for that work that is happening in classrooms because of the work that you are doing. And I'm thankful that more of it will happen after this week because of the materials and training that you will bring back to your colleagues. On Engaged New York, we have added a feature, Engaged Voices. How many people have seen the Engaged Voices blog? If you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to do so. And there we've asked people to just share stories of their experiences. And I wanted to share a couple. You know, I like to always have an organizing text for our discussions. And I wanted to share two excerpts. One from Toni Lynn Swinson, a math teacher in Webster, who described working on the algebra module, and she wrote, "I honestly thought they would struggle with it. To my amazement, they were engaged, focused, and motivated. Getting them to explain answers in a logical manner, respecting others' thought processes, yet passionately proving their point was second nature to them. What have I been missing all these years? We as teachers for so many years have wanted to step in and rescue students we feel are struggling. Learning to step back and let that struggle continue is sometimes the best thing. Having students gain a deeper understanding of the math being taught is crucial to their long-term learning." I am thankful because of what's happening in Toni Lynn Swinson's classroom. I am thankful because of the learning opportunities being created by the Common Core's focus on problem solving. Rochelle Jensen, a 4th grade teacher in Rome, New York, writes about ELA, "I'm not going to mislead anyone. Often I felt inside like a first-year teacher, wondering how to do the next lesson. I had to read the lesson several days ahead of time, the morning of teaching it, and just before teaching it. I had a huge learning curve. I wasn't comfortable teaching this way, but I had confidence it would work and wanted to get better. What kept me going? My students. Last year, after only teaching the first module, I heard students independently talking about the narratives and looking for evidence to support their conclusions. They were looking back to the text and rereading so that they could better understand the content. My students' writing improved, and I was now reading clearly written, evidence-based student essays with a main idea and supporting details." I'm thankful for what is happening in Rochelle Jensen's classroom, thankful for the fact that the emphasis on using text to structure conversation among students and between students and their teacher, using evidence from text to structure students' writing is changing practice. Thankful that the work that you will do this week will help expand that change in practice. I'm thankful that you have resisted the distractions of the politics. The distractions of the politics of the last few weeks around whether it's teacher evaluation or Common Core, and focused on what matters most, which is teaching. I'm thankful that you have avoided being trapped in the conversation around assessment that narrows all discussion to assessment, good or bad. I'm thankful that you have committed to the view that assessment has to be a part of the instructional process, but it cannot define the instructional process. Together, we need to use this week and our professional development work to ensure that assessment plays its right role, that we have the assessment we need to inform good decision making at the classroom level, the school level, the district level, and the state level, but not more. That the role of assessment is not to define our instruction, but to give us good information about how students are progressing. That rote test prep is the opposite of what the Common Core aspires to achieve. We are about reading and writing and problem solving in math and rich learning experiences and seeing the role of text in science and social studies. We are about good instruction, not about teaching to the test. I'm thankful that in this room we understand that the evaluation system is not a gotcha system intended to shame, but rather a system that is intended to support, to provide continuous support around professional development, to provide continuous feedback to educators at all levels. And it is not a separate initiative from the Common Core, but bound up with it. The focus, for example, in many of the teacher practice rubrics on questioning fits nicely with the emphasis on discussion about text and the use of evidence in the Common Core. The emphasis in many of the teacher practice rubrics and the New York State teaching standards on moving the work from the teacher to the student, ensuring that our classrooms are places where the students are doing the academic heavy lifting. That focus in our evaluation system is consistent with the work that we need to do around the Common Core. The evidence collection tools on Engage New York, designed to help observers look for the shifts in instruction that the Common Core requires, reflect this idea that the Common Core and the evaluation work are bound up together as a way of providing continuous support and professional development. And we know that together we have more work to do on the issue of bridge building. I talked about the teacher in Newburgh and the scaffolding materials that she developed, or the work that teachers in Portchester are doing to leverage students' native language in support of their work in English language arts. We've got to build more scaffolding. We've done a lot of work around the bilingual Common Core progressions. We will continue to build professional development materials around those. We will continue to expand the scaffolding that comes with the modules, and the focus of the conversations this week will be on this issue of bridge building. How do we build a bridge between where our students are and curriculum materials that are set at the level of the Common Core standards? How do we help our students with disabilities, our English language learners, our struggling readers, our overage undercredited students? How do we help them have access? How do we help build a bridge to the standards? And that is work that will not just get done this year. That is our ongoing challenge. How do we make sure that all students have access to the opportunities reflected in the Common Core standards? We know as we approach that work that it must be grounded in trust of the educators who are in the classroom with students. One of the things that worries me that I hear sometimes around the state is this idea that the modules are a script. Have you heard that? This idea that the timestamps in the modules are somehow inviolate. This idea that the math modules, every single problem must be done, not a single math exercise skipped. That's not how we built the materials. You understand that. The goal behind the materials is to be a resource to support good decision making at the classroom and school level. But the educators who know students best have to be equipped to make the right adaptations to the materials to make sure that they serve the needs of students. That's the professional development work we'll focus on this week, but ultimately, that's the work that has to happen in schools. People have to take the materials and make them make sense for their students. They have to make those bridge building decisions. They have to make choices about which math exercises to do and which not to, and not just assign all the ones that are left for homework. But those are decisions that have to get made in classrooms, and we've got to support people through making those decisions in a context in which everyone is learning. And we've got to help people make those decisions, and sometimes we'll get them right, and sometimes we'll get them wrong. But ultimately, what I see happening in classrooms, what gives me great faith and optimism about the work that we're doing, is that students are getting more opportunities than they had before. One of the things to notice in last week's NAEP results, or two things to notice in last week's NAEP results. Yes, New York was in the middle of the pack, and yes, New York's NAEP results have been largely flat for a decade or more. But near the top, Massachusetts, where standards were raised in the mid-90s, and people said things like, the standards are too high, the tests are too hard. Students will never be able to do this level of work. And yet Massachusetts remained resolute, and the reason they are at the top in performance is because they were resolute about those higher standards. The other thing to notice about the NAEP results is that the two places that grew the most since the last NAEP administration, Tennessee and the District of Columbia, they have two things in common with us. One, they are ahead of us on the work on teacher and principal evaluation. Both launched comprehensive teacher and principal evaluation efforts earlier than we did and have used those to shape practice. Both are also deeply committed to the Common Core, investing in Common Core professional development, and in the case of DC, have begun to reflect the Common Core in their assessments as we have. So there's reason, even in those results, again, which show New York flat for the last decade, there's reason for optimism about the path that we are on and the destination that we have before us. I look forward as the week progresses to hearing about the work. I wish I could be here each day. I won't be able to be here each day this time, but I look forward to hearing about how the days progress. And I hope that your approach to the work will be to try and figure out what can you bring back to your colleagues, particularly on this issue of the bridge. How can you help your colleagues think about the bridge between where their students are and where the standards aspire for them to be? How do we both trust educators in the classroom to do that work and support them in that work of adaptation? And let me close with this. In thinking about today's conversation, I was thinking about things that are hard to do, that require sustained effort. And I ran into someone at the department who was reminding me of the historical topic that I talked about on the first day when I became commissioner 2.5 years ago. And I talked about the Montgomery bus boycott. One of the things people don't remember about the Montgomery bus boycott is that it wasn't a single event. It wasn't a rally or a protest or even a march. It was a sustained campaign over more than a year in which people who used to take the bus to work or to school or to take care of an elder parent or to get to church walked or carpooled, a small number of cars in the community. And they walked or carpooled because they were boycotting the bus system, which was segregated. Imagine and think about how you got here, think about how you get to work each day. Think about if you had to walk instead each day, not just for a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but for more than a year in order to take a stand for something that mattered. Things that matter are hard, and they take sustained commitment. And what the folks in the Montgomery bus boycott had, and it wasn't just activists or elected officials or ministers, everyday folks, what they had was a conviction that they would prevail, that social justice would prevail, and that they were prepared in that cause to walk each day. And Dr. King, who you know I often quote from because I admire him as one of the great authors in the history of American writing. He gave a speech at the conclusion of a march from Selma to Montgomery, reflecting on this idea that things that are worth doing are hard. Dr. King began last Sunday, more than 8,000 of us started on a mighty walk from Selma, Alabama. We have walked through desolate valleys and across the trying hills. We have walked on meandering highways and rested our bodies on rocky byways. Some of our faces are burned from the outpourings of the sweltering sun. Some have literally slept in the mud. We have been drenched by the rains, our bodies are tired, and our feet are somewhat sore. But today, as I stand before you and think back over that great march, I can say, as Sister Pollard said, a 70-year-old Negro woman who lived in this community during the bus boycott. And one day she was asked while walking if she didn't want to ride. And when she answered no, the person said, "Well, aren't you tired?" And with her ungrammatical profundity, she said, "My feet is tired, but my soul is rested." And in a real sense this afternoon, we can say that our feet are tired, but our souls are rested. Change is hard. It is challenging, and it is tiring. But the goal, their goal, was to advance the cause of civil rights. Our goal is to advance the cause of civil rights through educational justice, through ensuring that all of our students have access to the richest possible instruction that prepares them to succeed when they graduate from high school and college and careers, and prepares them to be good citizens. It will be hard. It will continue to be tiring. I am sure there are some sore feet in the room. It will continue to be tiring, but we must remain laser focused on the outcome we seek for our students. Our feet may be tired, but our souls are rested. Thank you.